Okay, is everybody still eating? It's okay if you're still eating. Barb's on the phone. All right.
Hey, Jen, I sent you a quick email. Did you see it?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Great minds think alike. Okay. I think Tony is here, Mike is here. Karen has not yet come back. I don't think we have quorum, do we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we do.
I'm here.
Yeah.
So, Director
ahead,
Richmond
Director.
is here, and Director Weed is here. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, I will call this meeting back to order. And we are on 4.1, which is a presentation from BC Hydro. Do you want to bring in the team? Good afternoon. Where did you go? There you are. Mr. Shepherd, Ms. LaCicero, welcome and thank you very much for being here today. We always love having you here. We would rather be in person with you, but here we are. It's your floor.
Great. Thank you. Yes, thank you all for time again and this board meeting. I'm Sabrina LaCicero with Community Relations and joined, as you said, by Jim Shepherd, one of our manager of capital projects. And we do have some slides that I think will be uploaded.
Through the chair, I'm just
okay.
requesting entrance to the meeting. This is Philippa, so that I can share that presentation for you. Just one moment, please.
Sure. Well, maybe while you're doing that, just the context for our update today. This is, oh, there's Philippa. So this is one of our biannual updates on our capital project work in the Bridge River system area. So looking at area from Goldbridge over to Lillooet. So it's focused on that area of work. But again, I think we always say, given that this is targeted, if there's interest in any other projects across the SLRD regions, we're happy to come back and speak to those as well. But for today, I'll turn it over to Jim to give the presentation.
Okay, if I get I think it's not the next slide, but the slide after that, if I remember correctly. That's the right one. So we've given this overview a couple of times, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but just sort of note the facilities, the LaJoy Dam, the Bridge River Powerhouse, the Terzaghi Dam, the Seton Dam, and the Seton Powerhouse, because we'll be discussing those, during this presentation. So next slide, please. Okay, so the BC Utilities Commission actually requested that BC Hydro provide a certificate of public convenience and necessity, so the CPCN, for the Bridge 1 and Unit 1 to 4 project, and the transmission project, and I'll discuss that in a little bit. So we have submitted the CPCN to the Commission in July. It'll take about a year for the BCUC to do their review, which means these projects will not be able to do any significant work until that review is complete. Right now, the tentative timing for this project, the 1 to 4 project, and the penstock recoating project is about 2030, 2031. And there's a smaller project, which is the foundation upgrade planning, and we're looking at targeting 2024 for that. Generating Station 2, actually lots of good news. We actually placed Unit 7 and 8 in service in September. Right now, we're waiting for the replacement transformer T7 to arrive. Tentatively, we heard they were going to be arriving sometime in, early next year, and then we're going to replace starting in May of next year, tentatively at this point in time. We completed most of the prep work done for the penstock recoating, and we're going to be doing all of the penstock recoating, all of the interior part of those penstocks in 2022 in that summertime. So about the same time. So we're going to do the penstocks, the transformer, and a couple other deficiency works on 7 and 8 at the same time. Next slide, please. Okay, for the Seton hydraulic bypass and generator placement, right now we're focusing on the geotechnical conditions of the rock beside the canal, and we're planning to drain the canal and doing some drilling work to confirm this. I don't know about the timeline of that. Do you know that, Sabrina, off the top of your head?
I don't have it in front of me, no, sorry.
Okay. This work is actually still targeted for the completion of 2026. And for the hydraulic bypass in 2027 for the unit upgrade. A couple of dam safety projects. The work that's on top of Mission Mountain at the BR1 surge shafts is ongoing. We started construction already this year. We're targeting completion in 2022. School Creek drainage improvements and the Town Creek drainage improvements, are ongoing, along with the School Creek spoil pile removal. Next slide, please.
Maybe Jim, before you move on, I can find out the timing of the canal work, but we do have a communications process that we follow for letting the stakeholders in that area know when that's going to be happening. So I can get that update for you as well.
Yeah, thanks. And again, the LaJoy Dam, early planning stages, we've developed a recommendation for a leading alternative, and the project team is going to be meeting with our senior leaders and members of the executive team later on this year, so we can seek endorsement for the alternative. Next slide, please. Okay, we've actually completed, we've got another job done. We've completed the transformer installation across from BR1 this summer, and we're just waiting for a spare transformer to show up so we can close out this project. The work in the Bridge River Terminal is continuing, and we're looking at completing this work on this project in 2023. Now, this is the transmission line that we're discussing. This is the transmission line that goes from Bridge River Terminal across the Seton Lake, running along the lake, and eventually to Kelly Lake Terminal over by Clinton. And this is going to be upgraded and repaired. This is actually part of that same CPCN we filed with the Utilities Commission with the BR1 units 1 to 4. So we're not going to see any work on this project starting till at least 2023. And this project is targeted for completion the fall of 2025. Next slide, please. how about I get you to, I mean, we've actually had a great year, no incidents on site. Let's get into the next slide because that's the sort of the one I really want to discuss. So COVID-19, our COVID procedures are still in place, and we're actually working out fairly well. I don't know if this is true public knowledge, but BC Hydro has a mandate in place for all employees and contractors. So all employees must have at least one dose of the vaccine no later than November the 22nd, and both doses by January the 10th. Additionally, contractors will need to be fully vaccinated by that January the 10th date. And after January the 10th, unvaccinated workers will not be able to work on a BC Hydro site or office. So realistically, as you're saying, we're like everybody has to be vaccinated. If they're not vaccinated, there are sort of processes in place with both employees and contractors that'll take place. Next slide, please. Oops. Yep, next slide. Yep. Right now, this is a down year. During our some of our past years, we only peaked at about 85 people this summer. Next year is probably a little less. It's not going to get more than 50 people total working on a couple of different projects. Doing the work over on the penstocks, doing that work over on the top of Mission Mountain, and replacing that transformer over on Bridge 2. So, 50 workers again next year. Realistically, we're not going to be seeing the sort of the peaks that we've seen in the past, that 120, 130 people. The only thing that I can really see is, depending on how the project team runs a transmission line project, we're probably not going to see those peaks until, when the BR1 project and the LaJoy project start up. And then we can see some larger numbers at those two projects. Next slide. Again, most of the accommodations that we're going to have in the next while over at Bridge until at least 2025 are just going to be the Seton Lake area. So going to be either at Shalath or the Seton Portage. And the next slide. And again, we're seeing approximately 50 workers next year and about 30 workers the year after. Again, the workers will all be in the Shalath Seton Portage area. So I think I'm going to pass it right next slide. Yep, passing it back to Sabrina to finish us off here.
Yeah, so it's a very high flyover, all of the work that's taking place over the summer, and then looking ahead, the updated timelines and project status. And I'll just comment on the couple of projects that Jim talked about where we know we'll start to see that bump up in workers again, not for the next couple of years, but a few years from now. We're going to be working, in those regions just to look at for Seton, for example, the District of Lillooet, looking at sort of what the workforce will look like when it's a bit more defined. Still early in that process, but we'll be speaking with the district next week to start that conversation as well. So all the more reason to come back with some of these updates, just recognizing that workforce size is a particular area of interest. So knowing there's some housing needs related to that. So just to add to what Jim was saying there. Otherwise, we do have, just a reminder, our ongoing communications that we try to keep going throughout the year, and a bit more virtually in the past 2 years, but we do still have the Bridge newsletter. That one should be coming out in November. That will provide an overview. It's available publicly on our website. Just some high-level updates again on our project work. We'll be looking at, for some projects, some open houses again, thinking of Seton being one of particular interest, and LaJoy as well, looking at the leading alternative coming out. We anticipate shortly, and a number of other channels as well. So we'll continue to come here to share those updates as the work progresses. So I think with that, we'll open it up to questions if we have time. I think we're okay.
Are there any questions? No, you were just so clear. And because we have this regular visit with you, we know what's going on, which is awesome. I do see Director Rainbow and then Director Birch Jones.
Oh, I noticed in one of the slides that it said that when the work on the LaJoy Dam is being done, the lake will necessarily be really low. What does that mean for wildlife? What does it mean for people that live in that area? Does it affect their water supply or anything like that?
You know, Sabrina, off the top of your head, I actually haven't been involved too much in the LaJoy project, so I can't actually answer that question.
Yeah, I think it depends what the leading alternative is. So there's a number of field studies and desktop studies that we've undertaken to try to understand what those impacts are for the alternatives, and you know, looking at the extent of the work on the dam face there that could be done. So I think that's something we can come back and share more specifically about the project as we understand what the work will look like and which alternative we go with, and understanding there's impacts to vegetation. And there's also roads nearby as well, like depending on what types of levels we're talking about. But the project itself will require we bring that lake level down quite low to get to the dam base to undertake that work. It's just how we approach that work and how we do that work might have some differences in the impacts. So it's part of the assessment process, and that's something we can come back with as it gets more defined.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Birch-Jones, did you have a question?
Thank you, and it's nice to see you guys and hear this update. Did I hear a reference to some compensation for transmission lines in there? It's towards the beginning of your presentation? No, okay. Is the gate spawning? Okay, I just wanted to see you smile, Jim. The gate spawning channel, I understand that that's been decommissioned.
That's a good question that I don't know the answer to.
Okay, it's something for the Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program. Let me send that concern through you, because that gate sockeye run pretty important. That was an important enhancement project. And did I hear you say there'll be an open house in Lillooet at some point in the future? Because I could certainly go to that. I'd like to.
This, this was in reference to the Seton unit replacement project. So yeah, we want just that one. And there's a lot of interest. It's right in town, and it's a big project, particularly with potential bypass going in. So want to make sure there's a lot of information available. So that would be in coming months.
Thank you.
Okay, and Director Demare.
Thank you, Chair Ford. Thank you for the presentation, and I definitely look forward to the public meeting on the LaJoy Dam project, and looks like it's getting close, so that's good news. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I mean, they are talking within the next month. They're going to take this to our senior leaders, and then as soon as they do that, then it goes up to our board, and then it goes into the BC Utilities Commission.
Yeah, so our hope is to come out. We were hoping this fall. I think it depends where that decision lies, but again, probably in the next maybe couple months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Elliott, go ahead.
Thank you for the update. Director Birch-Jones mentioned salmon and bypasses, and I'm just wondering how we take what the unfortunate situation that happened in Squamish with the fish kill recently, and how do we make sure that that information and that way of what we learn from that spreads through the entire region.
Well, we're really super fortunate because Sabrina is actually one of the people that's all over or working with the teams on the Cheakamus. And, you know, given that she's actually privy to like all of the projects within this region, she's a great resource to have. Expand on that a little bit, Sabrina.
Sure. So I can just give you some context of our response. I know it was disappointing to see that the result of that, the impacts to fish, the event that happened, I think it was October 1st or 2nd, late September, there was a storm, and then the ramp down that followed following the spill in September. Our response internally has been across the business groups. It's something we've taken very seriously, and we have engagement ongoing in the area where we've increased communications as a start that was a big takeaway. Listening to First Nations and stakeholders and assessing, and we're still assessing the event and what happened. And I think where we're starting is increasing that communications effort to ensure, as the storms are developing and we're seeing in real time what's happening, there's communications about where we're anticipating operations to go through those events. And then a big part of that as well as looking at fish salvage, making sure we have enough people on the river monitoring how the ramping is going, and also taking action with salvage. So that of course is what is happening at Cheakamus. And given that it's a cross-disciplinary team internally, there's a lot of learnings we're taking away, and it's an ongoing conversation right now, and one where there's a lot of activity on, and really appreciative of the First Nations and stakeholders and public and yourselves as well, and the conversations and feedback we continue to receive, so we can work. There's a lot of work to be done going ahead, so I value those contributions significantly. So if there's any specific questions you have on programs or what this means specifically for different activities that we're doing, let me know. We can have another conversation and share some of that in more detail in different parts of the SLRD as well. So
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? With that, I will say thank you both for being here today and for your very clear community partnership. We are grateful to you. We'll see you next time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next delegation is, we're jumping ahead to 9.7, which is the Whistler Center for Sustainability presentation regarding food security and food waste recovery program in the corridor. Are we bringing them in? Good afternoon, Director Belsham.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Shannon Gordon. So nice to see you.
Hello. Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me.
And we have one other person joining your presentation.
From my team, it's just me.
And Vanessa LaFontaine from the Environmental Services Department will be joining.
Great.
Okay. Sorry, we're a little behind.
That's okay. Not a problem. From my end, here's Vanessa.
There we are. Hello. All right, let's talk food waste recovery. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you. I'll defer to Vanessa LaFontaine to start us off as she prepared the report for the board.
Good afternoon. My name is Vanessa LaFontaine. I am the Communications and Project Coordinator for Environmental Services. The report before you today is in regards to the Sea to Sky Food Recovery Strategy and Action Plan developed by the Whistler Center for Sustainability on behalf of the Resort Municipality of Whistler. The work was focused on understanding food waste generation in the Sea to Sky region with the goal of creating strategies to maximize the recovery and distribution of surplus food while minimizing food waste going to landfill. I'd like to pass it over to Shannon Gordon from the Whistler Center for Sustainability to present the final report.
Sounds good. Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everybody. Okay, the slides are perfect. Thank you. So I'll just cue the progression of the slides. Just before I jump in, a couple of words. So yes, as Vanessa mentioned, we undertook this project on behalf of the municipality, the Resort Municipality of Whistler, but involved the other municipalities in the region, and so had representation from those communities on our task force, as well as from the SLRD and then other organizations representing different aspects of the food system as well. So it was really a team effort, especially my team. So I just want to also provide a bit of a caveat. I'm here to present and I'm happy to do it. A lot of the research was undertaken by other teammates. So I will do my best to respond to questions at the end of the presentation. And if I can't, I will take your questions and try to get back to you. But certainly the detailed research was done by another colleague of mine, Dan Wilson, and then Chiang Ho was also involved in this project, along with some of you may know from Pemberton, Don Johnson. So really a team effort, but I will take you through at least at a high level. So next slide, please. Yes, the project was actually, it came about from a previous food project that we had on the go, which was a task force. It was also task force led, but a food project to identify how to improve the food system overall in the corridor, improve connections and production and things. So the need to improve food recovery and distribution was actually identified by that other project and that other task force. We were able to secure funding from UBCM's poverty reduction grant stream. And not only did that allow us to undertake the project, but we were very pleased to be able to provide honoraria to the food bank organizations themselves and to food bank clients who participated in a survey that we did. So the funding allowed for that for people's time to be covered as well through the project, which was great. Next slide shows the project goals. So there was a whole bunch of research, as I alluded to, a whole bunch of research was undertaken to really get a better understanding of the excess food being produced in the region, the surplus food, and to understand food insecurity, food needs through the different food banks or food programs, as well as to understand the food distribution models that are already in place. Part of that also, what we did to inform better action planning was a scan of best practices. So looking at food recovery and distribution best practices to inform the next part, which is identifying strategies and actions. So they focused on improving the recovery and redistribution and supported a number of other goals, obviously supporting poverty reduction, reducing food waste, and meeting zero waste goals, not only for the RMW, but also through the region. So that's what we were aiming to do through the project. Next slide, please, just gives an overview of the process and the timeline. There were 3 phases in the project. The first 2 phases really were research heavy, with some task force meetings to review the research, make sure the task force, understood the results so that we can move into phase 3, which was the strategy development, action planning strategy development, which was a more involved phase for sure. Took some time and was a little bit delayed with COVID as well. But involved multiple touch points with the different stakeholders. So we were very involved with the food bank representatives along the way. As I mentioned, we did the survey with the food bank clients, kept touching base with not only the whole task force, but at times just one-on-one with whether it was grocers, restaurants, and some of the hotels as well, to get a better understanding of the supply and demand and the way the system works. So that's just an overview of the phases. I want to dive in now to findings. So next slide, and you can sort of skip past it, but so findings, what we learned is that The percent of the population in the region that is low income is between 5 and 11%. Whistler's low income population is highest in the region at 11, which is on par with BC's. As I mentioned, this will be quick. Next slide just gives an overview of the food of average monthly food costs for a family of 4. And this map doesn't actually, we have a finer sort of breakdown for our region. So this, we didn't have a map to show it, but essentially the average food cost for a family of 4 are pretty even throughout BC, not a huge difference. For our corridor, in fact, we have the amount is 1,038. So actually the same as Northern Health, as you see on the map, and just a little bit higher than the BC average, which is $1,019 a month. So not that much higher than the BC average, on par with what Northern Health, our corridor is more on par with what Northern Health experiences. So slightly less than the rest of Vancouver coastal health as far as food costs. Next slide just gives a little bit of an overview of food insecurity in our region. So, and some of the data is older and likely has been exacerbated by COVID. About 5% are food insecure. That was the How Sound Health Area data from 2013. About 7% of youth in our health region go to bed hungry and also report not having enough breakfast or not having any breakfast in the mornings. And then First Nations members are even more food insecure than that at 22%. So that's just gives a quick sort of overview of food insecurity in our region. Next slide shows food industry, just the breakdown of farms, sorry. So growers in the region, not surprisingly, most of those are found in electoral area C, which will come as no surprise to most of you. 94 of the 138 farms are in electoral area C. And this graph just shows how they provide food, how they're distributing food. The next slide, restaurants and growers, gives an overview of the number of restaurants and grocers in the region, a breakdown, the difference between, so premises and entities. Entity is the umbrella that might have multiple premises. So as an example, local to Whistler would be Whistler Blackcomb as one entity, probably has, a couple of dozen, maybe more premises. So that's the discrepancy there. But as you can see, so certainly a higher portion of those food sort of outlets, retailers in Whistler, Squamish, not surprisingly. So maybe more opportunity for some of the recovery to happen here and move through the region. The next slide gives an overview of the food programs. So certainly there are typically 3 food bank locations in the region. One operated in Whistler by Whistler Community Services, another in Squamish operated by Squamish Helping Hands in the under one roof, the new under one roof facility that we were fortunate enough to tour not too long ago, about a month ago. And then Sea to Sky Community Services operates the Pemberton Food Bank, and through COVID also established a temporary food bank in Lillooet, which as far as I understand there's, I think, hope or plans or talk at least about potentially expanding or extending that facility to be more than just temporary. So typically 3 food bank locations, and there's been a 4th put in place by Lillooet through COVID. And then the Southern Statlium Health Society also provides some food programs to service those more remote Indigenous communities. So that's just an overview of some of the access points for food programs. The next slide gives a quick overview of food program clients. And the data is not sort of, some of the more detailed figures are not sort of apples to apples, but what we could gather from the food banks. So Whistler has about 60 visits per week, Squamish about 100, Pemberton about, Pemberton's is not visits, but it's the number of people fed per week. One of the action items actually that came out of the planning process was the need to standardize some of the measures, some of the metrics and measurements that are being used to track food donated, so donations and how many and who are being served. So that will help with this sort of thing for comparison. But that just gives you an overview of who's being served currently by the food programs. The next slide is about seasonal demand. So what is interesting here, and I think provides opportunity for better coordination between the different communities and the different food banks and donors, is that there are different demand times. So Whistler's demand is highest in spring and fall, and production is probably highest winter, summer, which is when demand is highest in certainly winter in Pemberton and Lillooet. So probably some potential to have better coordination within the region to be moving food outside of each individual community. All right, a recoverable food. So I've been talking about recoverable food, but just to give it a bit of a definition. So this is food waste that is not sellable, but is still edible. So it can be consumed and prepared for consumption. And it can be gathered all the way along the production line or the food system, from production all the way to consumption. There are, through that system though, higher and lower opportunities for recovery. I'm going to get to that a little bit, but as it goes out to households and that food is much more dispersed, getting that into a redistribution model, back to food banks becomes really difficult. So the better opportunities are certainly with grocers, and then with restaurants and hotels. The next slide gives an quantity of the potential for recovered food, and you can see that the tons of the ton of food with potential for recovery is pretty huge. But again, it's not for whether it's households, in some cases with restaurants and hotels, once food, even though there's potential, like it's still edible, once it's been guest facing, it's not donatable back to food banks. So there's a bit of a difference there. So what I find more helpful than this table, but this table gives you an overview of the total tons of food waste. The next slide gives a better sense of where the opportunities are for recovery. So green indicates high potential, red indicates low potential, and then yellow is sort of medium. So biggest potential for recovery, and I would say for donation, are the green. So the retail grocer area, and hotels, restaurants, HRIs, hotel, restaurants and institutions. And so households is yellow, meaning there's good recovery potential, but that recovery, the potential for recovery is better within the household. So not donated into food bank programs, but there is work to be done with households to have less recoverable food going to waste. So how can we better educate households to, make more soups and more stews and that sort of thing? So less donatable potential from households, as I've mentioned, but greater donation potential, certainly in those green boxes. All right, next slide just gives a sense of, in this case, from hotels and restaurants, and I would say that's the same, and I'm not sure why the data here doesn't include grocers, but certainly what we heard through also interviews, as well as a survey, which is what this data shows, is that greatest edible food waste comes from, is in the form of produce and breads and cereals, certainly by far, and then proteins and dairy sort of next, but more limited. Even just our tour of one of the food banks, the amount of bread that they get and then they try to freeze and store is huge. Okay, next slide is shows annual spending by the FDO food distribution organizations, or food banks in our cases, the amount that they're spending to meet client demand for food. And that's sometimes volume, but often it's meeting the demand for food types that the clients have. So, and you can see that the spending obviously has ramped up through COVID. So it'll be interesting to see where that stabilizes post-COVID, but Whistler's, ramped up significantly. Well, they all did, but Whistler's at 151,000 for the April to March core COVID period, 2020 to 2021. And data is not available yet for this next, obviously for this next year, but so significant. And if we can better match and better meet the need by the food banks and their clients through donations, we can ideally reduce the spend that occurs by the food banks. So what all the data, so we had so much data, so much input. And so what we did is we took and then we went through action planning with the task force, and we had a whole bunch of action ideas. And so we stepped back and looked at all of the input and tried to distill it down to some key findings. So the next slide shows just sort of a summary form of our findings. And the last slide, it really relates to this first finding here. Oh, sorry, not next slide quite yet. Yeah. So we know, so obviously all food banks need to purchase food to meet client needs. There are likely more people who need access to more affordable food. So what we did here also from the food distribution organization, food bank representatives, and just in some of the interviews and conversations, was that there are still barriers to accessing food from the food banks, not only geography and transportation, but just discomfort accessing the food programs. So with the stigma attached to it, scheduling, getting there, feeling comfortable with it. So there may be, and we expect more people who could probably use access to more of access to the food programs and what they offer. So trying to figure out those other people is an important next step. Remote communities face additional challenges accessing food programs, not only, remoteness, transportation, and then even from a delivery model standpoint with wildlife issues and things like that becomes more challenging. Some food waste is inevitable, especially from hotels, restaurants, institutions where things have been guest facing and can't really be recovered and donated. And then supportive measures are needed throughout the system to improve overall waste reduction and recovery. So capacity by all the players, building capacity through all the players is important. So that's just sort of distilled down what we found through the process. And then this next slide, just to introduce you quickly to strategies and actions that emerged. And then next slide again. So what we did is we lined up with those 5 key findings that I just took you through. We obviously coupled those with 5 key strategies, not surprising. So the first is secure additional recovered food to meet food bank program needs. And so there were a number of actions that were identified to achieve the strategy. One of them is improving or establishing better cold storage space at the different food bank locations. So for instance, through COVID, Whistler Community Services at the Whistler Food Bank location brought in a mobile cold storage space to increase their ability to accept donations and make sure food wasn't perishing before they could get it out to clients. Second strategy, removing barriers to accessing food programs. So this is addressing getting food to more people, whether it's transportation, but also understanding better who some of those next groups might be that aren't otherwise accessing the programs. So the example here is home deliveries, but it's also a better understanding of who these additional people are. So it might be that different the communities in the region actually use some surveying to better understand what additional needs might be within their community members. The third is working with remote communities on food recovery and redistribution. So really this project focused on the 3 municipalities in our corridor and didn't extend to some of the more remote communities, areas, and Indigenous communities. So at some point, that's a next step that could be better explored and with them and understanding what their needs are and what more customized solutions are for those remote areas. Next slide just gives the last 2 strategies, and I'm almost finished. So the 4th strategy is reducing and diverting, obviously, the waste food that can't be donated, right? So there are those, whether it's guest facing or some of those other waste streams that are inevitable. How do we and especially that aren't donated, we want to make sure we're keeping them out of the waste stream still. So upcycling of food into sellable products. Some of the grocers are already doing that. But as I mentioned, also in households, how can we educate households to make sure they're making the best use of food that arrives in their homes? And then the last is building overall capacity. I mentioned the improving the metrics, being more consistent in the way this is all being measured through the corridor so we can track this better. And then another example is enhancing community kitchen training programs. So giving people better or just improving people's understanding of ways to reduce food in their household is another example. To reduce food waste. All right, so that's just a quick overview of the strategies and actions that emerged. Next steps, we're doing these, presenting the results to the different communities. And then we've got some budget remaining in the project from the grant funding to continue to support implementation moving forward. So our team is going to continue to play a role in advancing this. We'll work to communicate the actions that have come out of this, but also to actually take on some of the actions. We think we can help lead on some of them as well. And then we'll convene the task force members next year to check in on implementation. And then also we want to monitor future funding opportunities to see how we can extend the work and continue it further beyond the funding that already exists. So that's a quick overview of next steps. And thank you. That's it for me. I'll take questions for sure, I'll answer as much as I can.
Thank you, Shannon. That was great. The work that WCS has done has been incredibly valuable. What I may suggest for the board is if there are any questions for WCS in regards to the program, is perhaps they can be streamed through the Environmental Services Department, and then we can work with Shannon in compiling a Q&A and response to the board as a group, because I'm sure there's lots in regards to that. But thank you so much, Shannon. Fantastic work.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all for the presentation, and we look forward to the next steps and the follow-up that is yet to come. It is very important work for our region and for the Sea to Sky corridor. Thank you. Director Rainbow?
Yeah, congratulations for the work that has been done. I think that's fantastic. Just a couple of comments, really. It's a Sea to Sky corridor. When COVID first started, we did that Feed the Need campaign and included Lillooet and Area A and Area B. You know, our tourism now is Sea to Sky goes up to Lillooet. I would like to see anything that's done in terms of food security, taking in our whole region and not just the Sea to Sky corridor.
Noted. Thank you.
Can I make one other comment? I'm really surprised at the statistics. There was the mention made that we needed to standardize the metrics. When I look at the statistics for Whistler, for example, 25% of the people being served are children. That's incredibly low compared to food banks that I've been involved with in the past in the Lower Mainland. And then in Squamish, it's something like 95% with single people. And again, that's incredibly high. Most of the food banks that I've been associated with have the number of single people has been much lower than the number of families, and maybe single parents, but not single people. So I just sort of question some of those numbers and suggest that you do really look at how you collect the information, how you keep the records.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see your hand, Director Birch-Jones. We will open questions through Vanessa and Angela at a future date. We don't have time at this time. I'm sorry to cut the conversation. And I thank you, Shannon, for being here.
Thank you. I'll leave.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, so we have Director Clark. Is it better for you if we finish the open agenda since we're in open and you're live streaming? Or is it better for us to go back into closed, finish closed, and then come back into open? Either way, we're going to be here all night. So.
Thanks, Chair. We can accommodate either. I just need a few minutes to stop the live streaming, but it's totally up to you.
We've got people watching right now, waiting for some of the items in open. So what do we tell them?
So let's finish open and then we'll go back into closed. Is that fair? Everyone happy with that? Can I get a hands up or something? Great. Let's carry on. We are at the consent agenda. Could I have someone please move the consent agenda? All of the items under number 5, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Mack. Is there anything, any discussion I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none. We are at 7.1.1, which is an information report on the quarterly development applications. Sorry, I'm distracted by chats. Yes, Director Needham will be here to present or answer questions about the quarterly development applications. Good afternoon, Director Needham.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
We are on 7.1.1 to hear about the development applications report. I'll turn it over to you.
Oh,
or did you just want to answer questions?
Yeah, yeah, I can just answer questions. That's okay.
Does anyone have any questions, or do you want to hit the tops of the waves just for the sake of introduction of the report, for the sake of people watching?
Sure. Yeah, this report is to do with just a quarterly update on our ongoing planning applications that we've received. So these include rezoning applications, development variance permits, temporary use permits, development permits, etc. And so it basically shows projects that are ongoing, as well as projects that we have completed since July of 2019.
Anyone have any questions? I thank you for this. Oh, go ahead, Director Rainbow, and then Director Elliott.
I thought to move receipt of the report.
Director Elliott?
I just can't recall where the Main Street Mount Curry project is at. That's the mixed residential commercial use.
Yes. Yeah, through the chair. That application is, it's basically at the turnoff at Mount Curry that to go towards Lillooet. That application is in process. We're waiting for some information from the Ministry of Transportation and working with the Lillooet on a number of aspects of it. So we're hoping we can bring something to the board early in the new year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Seeing none, this is helpful. Thank you very much for the report. Do I have someone move receipt for information? I had Director Rainbow to move it, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Any further comments? Seeing none, anyone opposed? Motion carries, and Director Needham will stay for 7.1.2 regarding a temporary use permit number 69 on the Britannia Oceanfront Development Corp. Area D. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application is for a new temporary use permit for a sales center that is meant to help Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation sell some units at the Copper Drive proposed development, where they have 73 townhouses that have been approved by the board. They previously had a TUP that expired, and it did not have a renewal option due to a report that was a floodproofing report. The applicant only actually wanted to have a year. So now they've come back with an updated floodproofing report stating that the sales center is safe for the use intended, and they have requested an updated TUP.
Okay, Any questions? Go ahead, Director Pettengill.
Yeah, just in the report, there was some mention that some buildings had been removed relative to some earlier planning, I believe. I got the sense that that happened quite a while ago. I just want to confirm, is that correct, or have things been moved around since the last public meeting?
The sales center itself is in the same location as the original permit was. I'm not sure about what buildings would have been moved around. I know that some of the historic buildings have been moved slightly to where their permanent locations would be, so that they could be put on foundations. So that might be what you're referring to.
Okay, and that happened quite a while ago, though, I take it.
Yeah, it's been kind of an ongoing process.
Okay, any other questions? Director Rainbow, go ahead.
I don't have a question. I'd like to move all three that's on 7.1.2.
Okay, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Any further discussion? Director Mack, or are you just moving it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Needham. And we are moving on to 7.1.3, which is a request for decision. We have Director Morgan joining us. There she is. Good afternoon, Director Morgan.
Good afternoon.
How are you today?
Good, thank you.
All right, we are on a request for decision on a net zero community accelerator program expression of interest.
Okay, so just briefly, we have the opportunity to apply to participate in the Net Zero Communities Accelerator program, which is being run by Quest, which is a national non-governmental organization with a number of corporate, academic, and other backers. It has two streams. Capacity building across the organization, and also a project initiation stream, which is about getting an organization absolutely ready to launch net zero initiatives in communities. So I think both streams would have a great deal of potential benefit for the SLRD. And while we're hiring our climate action and resilience coordinator, this would provide them with some additional resources and also embed it within the whole organization. It's a 3-year program. It would require some input of funding, but it is potentially, I think, a really good investment for the 3-year and the resource commitment that would come from Quest. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to move? Moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Elliott. No, you have a comment or a question. Go ahead, Director Elliott.
It seemed that this is pretty wide open and provides us with quite a bit of flexibility. When I first read it, I was a bit worried that it would constrain the hands of the new hire, but it seems that whatever direction they choose to take, there's something in this program that they can benefit from. Am I reading that right?
Yes, it's very much about preparing the organization through training and providing toolkits and resources, but the direction that the organization, as in the SLRD, decides to go in is still up to us, ultimately.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Director Demera, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ford. Director Morgan, just curious where the funding is going to be coming from. Will it come from the electoral areas or government services, or
Yeah, that is a question we'll need to address during the budget process. So I'd defer to CAO Helmer on that one. Yeah, that's as much as I can say on that.
Thank you, Chair. So at this point, the preliminary planning that we had for the 2021 budget year was that this new climate and resiliency coordinator would be doing work for the entire region and collaborating with the municipal counterparts, as well as working so all 4 member municipalities, whether there are specific counterparts or not, and taking a leadership role for the region. So the intent was that cost would be shared across the region as a part of the general government, rather than just being a burden to the electoral areas, because it was going to be a benefit to both municipal and rural residents. So that's where it's placed at this point, subject to any changes that may be directed by the board during budget deliberations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That answers it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to move this?
I'll move it.
Moved by Director Demare, second by Director Mack. Further comments? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Director Morgan.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Director LaFrance joining us. Director LaFrance, are you there? Director LaFrance, are you there?
Chair, she's messaged me that she's on the phone and should just be a sec. If you, perhaps we could move on and come back.
Okay, you want to move on to 8.1?
Thanks.
That seems like a bigger one though. We'll just wait.
Okay.
Unless there's something else. Can we do 9.2? Oh, maybe she's here. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Bad timing.
It's all good. How can we predict timing today? It's all good. All right, we are on 7.1.4, a request for decision regarding a gas tax community works funding request from Minto Communications in Area A. And I'll turn it over to you.
So yeah, as per the new policy for the gas tax community works fund, all of the programs kind of are vetted through staff, all of the requests for funding. And I've looked at this one. It's a continuation of the initial funding of 50,000 that was given in the middle of the year. Sorry, I can't remember, around spring, I believe. So they ran into cost overruns and approached us for more community gas tax funds. I brought this through EAD, and EAD, as per the policy, EAD has recommended that we fund this. And so now it's to the board for their final decision.
All right. Thank you for the very clear report. Go ahead, Director Demare, questions?
I'd like to move it.
I would like to tender any questions first,
Okay.
and then just to stay consistent. Are there any questions? Okay, I see no questions. Director Demare moves it. Director Birch Jones seconds it. Comments? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead, Director Demare, comment?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an incredible amount of work for a small society that they've undertaken. And I really appreciate Kristen Clark for the help they've given them. She's been a tremendous help with some of the tenures that the SLRD has on the amendments for the sites that Minto has an agreement with the SLRD on. So thank you, Kristen.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, we'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are bringing Director Needham back in for 8.1 and 8.2. Welcome back, Director Needham. Thank you for being here. And we are on 8.1. We're looking for a request for decision on the Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation CD2 zoning amendment. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So back in September, the board gave first and second reading to this bylaw 1734, and they waived the public hearing. We sent out a public waiver and advertised in the chief and sent out notices to neighboring properties. We've not received any comments back. We now need to give the bylaw third reading and refer it to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure for approval prior to bringing it back to adoption.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I see no questions. Would anyone like to make the motion? Director Rainbow, you're moving it.
Can I make both that's? I think so.
I feel like we can do both, yes.
Yeah.
So we're giving it third reading and we're making the referral. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack. Any further comments? Go ahead, Director Mack. No. There's a lag, so I see your hand come up.
Fine. Okay. No, I just seconded it. That's fine.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you. I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And now we're on 8.2, request for decision regarding the Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation Housing Agreement Authorization Bylaw and Amenity Covenant revisions. And we'll go back to Director Needham.
Yeah, thanks. So as part of the original rezoning of the Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation's lands, it was required that there be a housing agreement registered on the titles. And since that time, the developer has shifted the location of some of the proposed units. And so as a result, we need to discharge the existing housing agreement from the title, and we need to replace it with a new covenant that shows the location of the newly located units. In addition, there was also an amenity covenant registered on title, and that showed the health and enhancement facility, also known as the fitness facility, located in another location on the property, which relates back to the application we just spoke about. And so that covenant also needs to be amended and registered against the residential parcel. So that's what this report is about. And so there are a number of recommendations presented with respect to registering the new housing and amenity covenants, discharging the old ones, and because housing agreements have to be entered into by way of bylaw, the housing agreement bylaw needs to be read a first, second, and third time and adopted. It also recommends that the corporate officer be authorized to sign the Form C and any other documentation in order to effect the registration of these agreements and covenants.
Okay. Seems clear. Any questions? Director Pettengill and then Director Birch Jones.
The moving of the affordable units, is this what is what's being discussed here? What was, I think we saw in July, I believe, is that what we're talking about, or have they moved again since that last meeting?
Yeah, it was, I think it was presented back in July. And so that is, they haven't been moved since.
Okay, thank you. Director Birch Jones.
Thank you. I'm just reading about the daycare and I'm wondering, are we now allowing the option to delete the daycare if it's not used as a daycare immediately?
We haven't changed any of the terms for the daycare center. Those remain the same as they were previously. This report is really just about the moving of the residential units and the moving of the healthcare facility.
Okay, any other questions? Director Pettengill, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I know I had some concerns about the location of the one affordable unit. I think it was moved beside the fitness center, I believe. I spoke to the proponent. What I understood was that they were thinking this would be sort of largely a property caretaker suite. And so I'm just wondering if that sort of use is consistent with an affordable unit, sort of their own employee of the facility can take up an affordable. Do we count that as an affordable, or that's something separate, not really counted as affordable units then?
As long as whoever the renter meets with the criteria set out in the housing agreement, it's a legitimate rental as per the housing agreement.
Okay. Director Rainbow, go ahead.
I'd like to move option 1, which is discharge the covenants registered as CA 8450418 and CA 8450419 from title. Give 3 readings to and adopt the bylaw number 1735-2021 and register the new housing agreement and new amenity agreement on title to the lands.
Thank you for moving that. Director Crompton is seconding it. We're doing the first 2. We have to do these separately. So the first 2 that's together, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Crompton. Any further discussion?
Sorry, I had a question.
Oh, sure.
Which was, Director Needham, the latest from the provincial government about changes around requirements for public hearings and all of those recent adjustments. I read that. Have you had a chance to read that yet?
Yeah, I think I know what you're referring to.
Okay. It just seemed to me, and I assumed that I just misread it, but it seemed to me that we have a lot of those abilities already. Like we waive public hearing on a regular basis. And I'm just wondering if, as we're about to do, and I'm wondering if you see those announcements having changed anything for us.
I don't believe this report is recommending a waiver of a public hearing. There's no public hearing required in order to enter into a housing agreement bylaw.
Okay, then I will second it. Thank you.
I think you made reference to it in the historical context of what this property has gone through. So
yeah, fair enough.
That's where you were picking that up. Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder for the first 2 that's. I'm open to any further comments on this. Okay, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. The second motion, I believe Director Rainbow wanted to move that this be adopted as laid out in the package, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Demare. Further discussion? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And then the, what is that? Board approve a revised amenity covenant in Form C as attached, and that the corporate officer be authorized to sign such form. as laid out in the package, moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Birch Jones. Further comments? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Does anybody need a 5-minute break? Seeing none. We'll carry on. Someone message me if you need a break. We're on 9.1, CEO verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing today.
Okay. We'll go to 9.2. This is a request for decision on the appointment of alternate signing authority. Could I have someone make the motion as laid out in the package? Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Elliott. Any discussion? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Director Needham is back for 9.3. Welcome back.
We're
going to talk about 9.3, which is the Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation revision to construction conditions. Turn it over to you.
Oh, okay, great, thanks. So back in July 2019 at the board meeting, the board adopted the OCP and zoning amendment bylaws associated with Britannia Beach. That zoning authorized 73 townhouse units to be constructed on the residential portion of the site. And at the time, there were restrictions put in place recommended by staff that the Heritage Revitalization Agreement be adopted and that the flood protection systems be in place prior to moving or allowing building permits to be issued for more than 6 units at the site. So since that time, staff at the SLRD, as well as the staff at Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation and staff from the Ministry of Forest Lands, Natural Resources and Rural Development have been working quite diligently to try and address land tenure issues at the site. Particularly with respect to a Crown-owned parcel that's immediately adjacent to the Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation site. That particular site was meant to be the landing pad for the riprap barrier, which would basically contain the fill that's required at both the Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation's land, as well as the Crown site. So essentially, BODC they need to raise their land to a certain flood construction level. And they had agreed to also pay for and provide fill to also fill the Crown site. The idea was that the SLRD would ultimately acquire the Crown site for parkland. And the fill on the Crown site also serves another purpose, which is to cap the site, as it is a contaminated site. It's a bit of a problematic site for the Crown in that there's a lot of cleanup that needs to go on there, and capping is seen as the most effective way to cap and contain the environmental sort of concerns there. And so we've all been working together to try and find a resolution to this. We're getting very close. BOTC could opt to build containment of their own fill on their own land, but really it's just a duplication of efforts and costs. It makes a lot more sense for the barrier to be located on the Crown land. And so that is coming along. I've received emails this morning about that, and the Crown is now willing to give us a license of occupation, but of course these things take time and need to go through lawyers, etc. So right now there are 2 key resolutions that are holding back further development at the site. And just so the board is aware, Britannia Oceanfront Development Corporation has started construction on the 6 units that they are allowed to have. And they have been working with a construction company known as Adara, and Adara has crews sort of ready to go and to continue working. And so BODC has come to us to say, hey, we've got these crews on the ready. We want to carry on. Is there a way that we can get approvals to build more units with the condition that there be no building permits that would be finalized and no occupancy ahead of the requirement for the Heritage Revitalization Agreement bylaw to be adopted, and to remove the limitation that there only be 6 units down there prior to flood-proofing works being fully in place. So to back up a little bit, the board saw the Heritage Revitalization Agreement at a couple of board meetings ago. And at that time, the board had requested that BODC come back with a plan as to how they would represent First Nations history on the site. BODC has presented a plan to staff, and we intend to bring that back to the board. I think the board will be quite pleased with it. In the meantime, that agreement has gone to the Ministry of Transportation for approval because the Local Government Act requires that such bylaws go to MOTI. We were informed that from MOTI that the bylaw actually had to be referred by them to the minister for adoption, which was something that we were not aware of. And I guess this can take several months. We believe it's probably going to be approved by December or January. And we also would bring the Heritage Revitalization Agreement back to the board for adoption, at that point, with showing the board the representation of First Nations history on the site. What staff are requesting on behalf of BODC is that the previous limitation of 6 townhouses be lifted, pending the approval of a flood and debris control regime that is approved by a geotechnical engineer. And the idea would be that we would provide a new safe use covenant on the site that would be signed off by a geotechnical engineer, reviewed by our lawyers, of course, stating that no occupancy can occur until the riprap works are installed on the province's land, or the owner has provided us with a geotechnical report certifying that the lands can be protected by alternative flood works, and has constructed those works. We would also want that covenant to basically require that there be a leave strip on the BODC land, so that if they had to install riprap on their own site, that would be available. We are also requesting that there shall be no issuance of building permits until the HRA is fully adopted. And that would be for any units beyond the 30 that they're requesting. Sorry, this is all a little complicated. In addition, one of the recommendations is that also as a condition of this whole package of resolutions, that BODC provide us with the full monies that have been promised as part of the GeoBrugnet servicing area, which is $285,000, as well as the full letter of credit in the amount of $2,647,000 and 786 cents. So, or $2,647,786, sorry, which represents 135% of their landscaping estimates. As well, we're recommending that the existing safe use covenant be discharged with the replacement of the new one. And that the CAO or corporate officer, I think we should add in corporate officer to that last resolution, be authorized to sign any documentation that may be required to affect the registration of the 219 covenant and the existing safe use covenant. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. This project has a lot of moving parts, as you might have seen by all the other reports that have been coming forward today.
Sure does. Any questions? Director Elliott?
I am sorry, there's horrible leaf blowers in the background, if you can hear them. Someone should ban those here.
I know.
And so obviously when this was rezoned and as they get their building permits, we've established all the flood construction levels and the mitigation's all there. All we're waiting for is the riprap on the crown piece of land. Is that sort of the last piece of the puzzle?
Yes.
And has that all been designed or imagined by technical people?
Yeah, the designs have been done. It's really getting the license of occupation with the Crown and dealing with all of the Crown's related requirements. That's sort of the outstanding piece that's been stalling our negotiations on dealing with that.
So we'll see the heritage plan in November, and then we would expect MOTI approval December, January. Is that the order?
We would bring the heritage revitalization package back to the board once we get the approval from the minister. So we will bring that back and also bring BODC's plan for First Nation representation back at that time. So I'm guessing it'll be possibly December, maybe January. And I guess the reason that BODC is asking for this, making the request for us to allow them to move ahead with this in advance is that they've already got the crews on site ready to go. And if we wait until January, it's very likely that those crews are going to move on and find other work. And so this is really about carrying on with the momentum that they've got down there right now with their construction.
All right, but they can't have occupancy until all of those I's are dotted and T's are crossed, is what I understood. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You? Any other questions, Director Rainbow?
No, I want to know what I can move. I
will let you know. I've got you there. I just want to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to ask the questions that they have. Anyone? Anyone? Okay. Director Rainbow, would you like to make the first motion that we rescind the resolutions as laid out in the package?
Yes.
Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Elliott. Any further discussion? Director Pettengill.
Yeah, just maybe mostly for the benefit of the proponent. I did raise concerns about this last time we spoke. I had a conversation with the proponent and have a better understanding of their intent. I think the report that was attached was what gave me a lot of pause. And I feel like we're sort of, when we sign off, we're saying this is the history or endorsing that. And for me, given the context of that one report, I was concerned. And so, just I'm glad to see that they are thinking about Squamish Nation and addressing that history. And the other concern I had was sort of the, I guess, the lack of attention to some of the industrial impacts of the area, which I would sort of hope to see in whatever they plan to address for the future. In terms of the development itself, though, and the building plans, I went to the site and, I think it's going to be could be quite a nice site. Just wanted to have those comments. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any other comments? I echo your, Director Crompton.
I was about to say what you were in the middle of saying, so carry on. Continue echoing.
I echo the appreciation to the developer for moving this along with sensitivity and definitely engaging with the community. I think this is a great thing to see. So I am glad. And with that, could I have Director Rainbow please move the next 3 VATs?
Yep.
Sorry, Chair.
Kristen, go ahead.
I didn't have you call in the question on the first resolution.
I'm calling the question on the first resolution. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Can I move the next 3 VATs, please?
No, Tony is moving those, but you can second
I
them.
know. I knew that. That's what I was trying to.
Okay. Director Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to make a note that the revision that Director Needham mentioned to add corporate officer to the last VAT is part of this, correct?
That is the intention. Yeah, so it's the CAO and corporate or corporate officer be authorized to sign any documentation as may be required. Thank you. And with that, 3 VATs, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we have more notes. Okay, we have Claire Dewar joining us. Oh, there she is. Hello.
Hello, my name is Claire Dewar and I'm a planner here at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I'm assuming we are jumping into item 9.4, is that correct?
That is right.
Excellent, thank you. So I can provide a brief overview of the request for decision on the District of Lillooet, Village of Pemberton, and District of Squamish regional context statements, and then happy to provide or answer any questions the board may have. So really, these regional context statements are being submitted in response to the SLRD Regional Growth Strategy Amendment Bylaw 1562-2018, also known as the RGS Review, which was adopted by the SLRD board in October of 2019. And as per the Local Government Act, updated regional context statements must be submitted to the Regional District Board for acceptance within 2 years of adoption. So that's what we're considering here today. I will note that for the RMOW, acceptance of the regional context statement amendment that is statutorily required in relation to this RGS review was addressed back in October of 2019, concurrently with the adoption of the RGS review bylaw. And this was also related to the OCP, RMOW OCP update project that was underway at the same time. So I won't get into the background or the Local Government Act requirements in relation to regional context statements. I do want to mention that when we expect to see regional context statement amendments, there are sort of 3 instances. One is when a new official community plan is being developed or updated. Another is when amendments to an existing official community plan are proposed that are not consistent with an accepted regional context statement. And the third is either within 5 years of the board's latest acceptance or in association with an RGS review, which is the sort of current situation that we're working with right now. Just really touch briefly on some analysis here. For the District of Lillooet, staff are in agreement that the District of Lillooet OCP policies and objectives reflect general consistency between the OCP and the RGS. I'd also like to recognize that the District of Lillooet staff have worked to ensure consistency through the District of Lillooet OCP update, which was just adopted yesterday. I did get word that went ahead. And I think it's just nice to see that sort of through this table of correspondence, we can really see sort of the alignment at that strategic direction level, which supports implementation. Similarly, for the Village of Pemberton, with that regional context statement submission, SLRD staff are in agreement that the Village of Pemberton OCP policies and objectives reflect general consistency between the OCP and RGS. Some gaps in policy have been identified and are committed to be reviewed during the Village of Pemberton OCP review, which is set to take place sort of now and through 2023. And SLRD staff are supportive of this approach and hope the regional context statement submission process was beneficial in identifying areas for further regional alignment and collaboration. And finally, just touching on the District of Squamish regional context statement, the District of Squamish had already sort of gone through a process of ensuring alignment when they updated their OCP. And so this was really just focusing on this the RGS review. So there wasn't much to update here, but there were a few policies that were sort of brought in alignment there too. So staff are in agreement that we have general consistency and alignment for that context statement. I also wanted to mention just briefly, because this was a board resolution back in July of 2020, just around our greenhouse gas targets and the sort of direction to explore alignment with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change targets. I want to note that this is, we are having ongoing conversations around this. SLRD staff brought this item to the RGS Steering Committee in March of 2021. We had good discussion there. It's a bit, there are some aspects that come into play when we bring in new targets at the RGS level that would trigger requirements to then update everyone's OCPs. So that's just something that we really need to consider when we look to make sort of bring in different targets, how that might affect our municipalities' OCPs. So I just wanted to note that those discussions are ongoing. We intend to revisit those discussions when we meet with the RGS Steering Committee, either in December or January. And this will also be in along with our RGS indicator monitoring results, which include GHG emissions. So sort of connecting those two pieces. And I will leave it there for now and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to make the motion as laid out in the report?
Move it.
Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Anyone, any further comments? Director Pettengill, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Just looking through this, and to Claire's point, I think I did pick out in the RGS ensure climate action is evidence-based, and thinking about how that flows through into OCPs, and is there alignment there if we assume that the IPCC is the evidence-based thing. And so that, and actually some of the lobbying around and advocacy expectations around major carbon dependent projects. In my mind, there's maybe some work to do there, but so I just sort of wanted to flag that. The other piece though, when I was looking through Lillooet's table of concordance, the stuff on reconciliation and engagement with First Nations really jumped out to me as really strong. And so I just wanted to give kudos to Lillooet for that.
Nice work. Great. Any other comments? Thank you very much for your work on this. And I know that this is a huge body of work that is ongoing and ever evolving. And so this is great. Thank you very much. With that, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. 9.5, we're going to defer that until tomorrow because there will be a delegation tomorrow during Committee of the Whole with regards to that topic. So we'll wait to hear what they have to say tomorrow. And we'll move along to 9.6. Director.
Thank you.
Do I need a motion to defer?
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to defer? Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Wiebe. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 9.6, Planning Procedures Policy.
Would you like a presentation, Chair?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so during the pandemic, the local, the province allowed local governments temporarily to conduct public hearings electronically for safety reasons. But they reached out to many of the staff in the province and conducted a number of surveys, etc. And the province has now decided to permanently allow local governments to conduct public hearings electronically. So this is a pretty big shift in the way local governments do business. And so as a result of this change coming down from the province, we needed to update our planning procedures policy in order to address electronic public hearings. We've attached the change to the report, but essentially we've just added language to our policy to enable public hearings to be held electronically. When we bring applications for rezoning to the board, we would make the recommendation when we go for second reading as to how we intend to host the electronic public hearing, or whether we would at all. We've found that electronic public hearings have actually, we've seen a lot more attendance, and it allows people who are in the more remote areas or who own property in the more remote areas to attend our public hearings. So it's been actually quite a, we found it to be a great process. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the proposed changes to our own policies in order to bring about this new provincial regulation?
Kim, Ms. Needham, I do. I think Jen stepped away for a minute, but I just want to confirm that we can do a hybrid and that you could hold, for example, a public meeting and at the same time have Zoom input from others who did not want to travel to an actual physical public meeting.
Yes, it's possible. It does require probably a couple of more staff in order to do that. So there's a cost, definitely in terms of staff time in order to do hybrid meetings, because we have to have a facility. We have to rent a facility for the meeting. We have to send staff to the meeting, but then we also have to have somebody who can set up the Zoom meeting and work the electronic side of it. So it gets a little bit more complicated, and it probably requires at least one, if not two, additional staff.
And since I don't see Jen here, maybe Tony, I'll just recognize you and you're still on mute.
I was going to ask the same question that you did, because I agree that if we have a public hearing by Zoom, you do attract more people, especially people that don't own property in the area. You know, the absentee property owners. By Zoom, they're able to attend, whereas otherwise they might not be able to. I think that's really important. I like the idea of a hybrid thing. I wouldn't want to go just totally to Zoom. And you know, I just been to two things. One, I was at the Howe Sound Forum last Friday, and that had a physical presence for people in the room, plus a Zoom link, which seemed to work quite well. And then I was at an AGM last night, same thing. We had a number of people in the room, and we had a Zoom link up, and it worked really well. And if it costs a little more to do, and it takes a little bit more staff time, then we spend the money. We commit that time. Because if we're looking to truly engage people, we've got to give people as much opportunity as possible, make it as easy as possible for them to participate with us. So I think we just eat the cost and don't even worry about it.
Director Elliott and then Director Pettengill.
I didn't raise my hand, Chair.
I thought I saw, sorry. Director Pettengill, go ahead.
Yeah, just as I read through this question, I know I've seen the SLRD, we're fighting with technology a little bit. In Squamish, we've been fighting owls and microphones and so on to get things working. But it made me wonder if there are any sort of staff level conversations about some sort of compatibility, technology compatibility across the region, and the ability when the SLRD has a public meeting that you could attend there's a place in Squamish or Lillooet. So if you don't have a computer or good connection, there's still a place you can go and sort of just go even one step further in terms of accessibility. So no matter where you are, you can go to your local community center or whatever it is and get connected to the SLRD public hearing and so on.
That's a good point. Go ahead, Director Needham.
Yeah, we haven't had those conversations. It's an interesting point. I hadn't even considered whether there are places we would be where we wouldn't have connectivity. My thought was that we would probably set up the Zoom side at the SLRD office and have staff attending in person at another location.
But in the past, we've held public hearings if it pertains to Area D, we've held them in Squamish, and so it makes sense that I think Director Pettengill makes a good point. Let's have those conversations at the staff level and understand what the opportunities are, just so that we have the best experience for everyone involved. That seems to make some sense. Okay, any other comments or questions? I see none. Do we have a motion on the floor, Director Clark? No.
I'll move it.
Okay, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Any further discussion? Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Director Needham.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. We've already dealt with 9.7. And I will ask for a motion to defer 9.8, which is a presentation which will happen tomorrow because we ran out of time for today. So moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, 10.1. This is the board round table. It is 10 to 3. I'll call again. Does anybody need a 5-minute recess? Director Elliott, you want a 5-minute recess? Okay, can we all come back at 3 o'clock?
That's
7 minutes.
That's good grief.
Sorry?
Minutes. Yeah, that's fine.
7 minutes to do
That's
whatever
fine.
you want.
Oh, thank you.
All right, take the time. Stretch.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all for being back right on time. Gold stars for everyone. All right, we are going to do the board round table. Start with Director Demare, Area A.
Thank you,
Oh,
Chair
and let's
Ford.
keep it to like less than 2 minutes each. Sorry.
We'll give that a try. Yeah, the BRBCA training committee is was up and running again this year after the didn't do anything last year, and they put on a S100, S185 wildland fire course that was well attended, and 2 basic chainsaw courses. And there's actually enough people for 1 more course, but we'll do the chainsaw courses next year. We'll do one in the spring, one in the fall. We had SLRD Fire Smart Day at Gun Lake, and we had really good participation, and we had a good gathering. We went for about 4 hours. We had lunch and talked with the food security presentation we just had earlier. There was leftover food, and Robin Strong, who was the coordinator, was from Lillooet, and I arranged for that food to be taken to the food bank. So in Lillooet, so that worked out really well. Marcia Valley will have their Fire Smart Day on Saturday, so that community will do something very similar. And we're going to have a Remembrance Day this year, as last year we didn't have one, so this year we'll have the Remembrance Day. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Area B.
Thank you. We finally had an agricultural advisory committee meeting in Area B and did a good hour's work and immediately scheduled another meeting. The 10-mile slide, it's 2 lanes now. They're going to let it settle and then pave it in a year or 2. It's not bad at all, though. The hub's open and operational. The pool's open and operational. We also had some good fire smart activities going on. Although I'd like to know a little more about the larger restoration plans. It's been such a massive destructive burn around here. But that is in the works. Maybe we'll hear more about that tomorrow. The Mandy, our NDIT business liaison, has been coming up regularly. We're going to hear from her tomorrow too, but she's been helpful and working with the chamber as well as the hub. The Quatlanimo campground, a lovely, modest little development is happening. And yeah, we're getting the fast charger put in at the mall. So I'm very happy about that stuff there. Thanks.
Right on. Area C, Director Mack.
Thank you. We have wonderful news for, for the Sea to Sky corridor. We have a new MOT area roads manager, and she's very enthusiastic. I've actually talked to her now 3 or 4 times in the last couple of weeks. We're going to go on a tour of all the roads. So things are looking up dramatically for hopefully getting some proper maintenance done. So I'm looking forward to that. Flu shots for seniors, October the 29th from 10 to 1 at the community center. That's a good thing. And something of interest, we've been having quite a few sightings of grizzly bears in the valley, Pemberton Meadows area. We've had one big boar that's living on killing black bears, which is kind of interesting. I guess he's getting fat for hibernation, and hopefully he'll just leave it at that. But a sow and 2 cubs wandering around. People up the valley are not going out at night without their bear spray, so things just are interesting. You have to be very careful. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Area D, Director Rainbow.
Thank you. Oh, this is a bit eclectic, bit of everything. As I mentioned just now, there was a House Sound Forum last Friday at Bowen Island, which was an interesting day. And there were actually quite a lot of people from the regional district there. And the preliminary announcement, the next House Sound Forum will be on April the 22nd, and it's going to be hosted at Furry Creek. Primarily because it's the 20th anniversary of the forum, and it all started with discussions at the Furry Creek Golf Course. I thought I'd just mention the art walk, which is the Squamish Arts Council has an art walk. It goes the whole of November. Most of the locations are in Squamish itself, but there a couple now in Area D, one at the top of the gondola, one at the Mine Museum, and there will be more in the future. But those, if you're interested in art at all, take a look around. If you're in Squamish, there are plenty of locations there with some really interesting art. So that's a little promo for that. We have a bear. We had a bear, a real live bear. I say she because could have been a young male, but I think it was likely a female. Camped out on the spit at Oliver's Landing for about 2 weeks. Just sort of wandered around in there, eating all kinds of berries and long grass and stuff like that, and took a little rest on the new platform at the end of the spit, which she seemed to thoroughly enjoy. And yeah, anyway, she's gone now somewhere. And lastly, if you're interested if you do any kayaking and you want to explore the marine trail, I had the opportunity of visiting a couple of the campsites that are in Area D on the west side of the Sound. One of them at Zorro Bay and the other one down near the Defense Islands. And I went over there with the guy that runs the Sea Kayak Association of BC. And on these two particular sites, I'm not quite sure whether the rest of their sites are up to the same standard, but they've got urine diversion toilets, which are really clean and nice to use, picnic tables, and tent platforms. So that pretty rugged areas, and so if you just a little platform out there, it means they can accommodate quite a few more people than and without degrading the land anymore. So just thought I'd mention that. If you're interested in kayaking, give me a call. I'll tell you where to go. And that's Area D has been putting some money into that as well. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go the other way, Squamish.
Thanks. So if you're at the House Sound Forum, you've probably heard much of this. So we approved our wildfire DPA that covers most of the community and dictates roofing materials and for new construction, what you can build your house with. So we've also implemented a landscaping bylaw along with that and have banned cedar, yew, and cypress hedging. So most of our homes are now legally non-conforming. And as they do landscaping, they'll need to move things further from their house and replace that type of hedging. So we're launching a big education campaign, and we've produced some landscaping guides and hedging alternative guides so that people don't have to think too hard. They can just get some suggestions from our beautifully designed brochures. And we're engaging with local greenhouses and plant supply stores to let them know how our bylaw applies. We're working on our marine zoning. It's almost through. We're now working on a marine access study, so how humans and their recreational accoutrements will access the water, and also in terms of economic development purposes, so marine access and business access. Our low carbon incentive bylaw comes into force in January, so that's the down zone on all of our residential zones. Unless people promise to not put in fossil fuel infrastructure, then they get it back. With the Community Energy Association and Whistler, we're creating an embodied carbon guide for local government. So that is an embodied carbon guide for new buildings. And then we've also been successful in applying for a grant to create a heat pump concierge program. So walking people through how to get your home assessed for and put in a heat pump instead of natural gas furnace. So super excited about that. We'll have, we're also putting in some extra money to top up the grants that are available. And basically this concierge, which we'll share with Whistler, will hold people's hands. We'll have so many homes that can apply each year and hold their hand through the process. And in return, we get a year of data from them. And also they get a year of coaching from the concierge of how to get the most out of their new system. So that's kind of cool. We've got our community Central Estuary Restoration Project underway. So that is to remove a portion of an old training dike, really, that pushed the river to the west side. And we're looking at removing, or not we, this is a partnership between DFO, a nonprofit, and Squamish Nation to remove the bottom 300 meters of the spit and eventually up to another 600 meters and basically reunify the bottom part of the estuary. And the district is working with some heavily impacted stakeholders, our kiteboarders, the terminals, to make sure that long-term solutions are in place for them. And so, yeah. And this morning I opened, and I apologize, I was late. I opened the first ever BC Association of Men's Sheds conference. And so there were men from all over British Columbia. We have sheds in Pemberton as well as in Squamish. And it's just a tremendously amazing organization to make sure that men 55 plus are connected to each other and to their communities and feel a sense of purpose and can contribute their experience and talents. It is absolutely one of the best things that has arrived in Squamish. Thank you.
Director Pettengill, did you want to add anything?
Just quickly, the one thing I'll highlight is we did on September 30th, day after I think our last meeting, had a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, Squamish, organized downtown by Squamish Nation members. A huge turnout. The weather cooperated perfectly. The timing was just started pouring rain the instant we were done, but it was nice throughout the event, and just a really moving, but also very positive, just wonderful day. So it was a great way to spend that day.
Awesome. I'm grateful for that. Thank you. We'll go to Director Crompton, Whistler report.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, my computer is having issues. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. So on that note, we had a wonderful National Day of Truth and Reconciliation in Whistler at the Squamish-Lillooet Cultural Center. I was struck by the amount of time and energy and love that the Squamish and Lillooet put into that. I mean, it is a day to consider the history of residential schools and colonization and all of these very hard things. And they gave generously of their time and their energy and their thought to host a huge number of people at the SLCC, which I thought was extremely generous of them. So yeah, just wanted to kind of join to what Director Pettengill said about September 30th. It was an exceptional day. Housing at the Checkmas Crossing neighborhood is going on sale next week. So that will mean a number of the market lots that are there will be for sale, but also fairly soon, all of the employee housing restricted units will also be up for sale, which is really exciting to see that kind of thing happening right now. We have just started a process with an organization called Rios Partners called the Whistler Sessions, and it's basically it's called transformative scenario planning, and they've done this work with, you know, when apartheid ended in South Africa, and, you know, large scale, really interesting policy situations. And our goal is to sort of understand where we're going as a community as we come out of COVID-19. And so the way transformative scenario planning works is that you get a broad collection of the people in your community who want to contribute, and you think through various future scenarios that could be. So it's not about should or want, but what could happen. And we'll have three-day sessions of doing this. We've just had our first, and it was really interesting to kind of think about what could happen in our shared future, and then to start planning around that. So I'm excited about the work that's happening there. At the Dane Art Museum, last week we opened the Reappel temporary exhibit, which is pretty incredible. Definitely go have a look at that. One other thing, Kawam Redmond Andrew is a artist and one of the cultural ambassadors of the SLCC, and one of his polls went up on September 30th, which is pretty exciting for a young man like that to start sort of having his art presented in Whistler. He's got another one that will go up soon as well, and so it's been neat to be able to celebrate that. And I will leave other things for Chair Ford. Thanks.
I don't have a lot to add. You covered most of what's happening, except that there is a super interesting case of a resident of Whistler who, for quite a long period of time, was feeding the local bears, and massive decision was made that that was not the right thing to do, and precedent-setting decision of $60,000 fine for that homeowner, which I think is super important to share, that it's important to understand it, and it's important to read about it. And yeah, so just wanted to share that. And I will go up to Pemberton.
I don't really have a lot to report. You know, it's been a wet fall here in Pemberton. We're watching winter creep down the mountain. At council, we've been doing a lot of, I guess we'd call it housekeeping, a lot of policy, smaller policy work, and some bylaws that I don't think would be of huge interest to this group, but it's taken up a lot of our time. We did have a public hearing and then subsequently passed the rezoning to allow for the construction of the French school, which will be right at the entrance to town. And that'll be a K-12 school with daycare as well. And again, that's just sort of, you know, just between the Creekside condos and the Petro-Canada before you turn left into Pemberton. So that's exciting for the community. Yeah, I don't really have much else. Russell, if you're speaking with our new representative there, make sure you, on your tour, take her over the Lillooet Bridge there and show the terrible condition that's in, because it's brutal. And other than that, that's all I've got from Pemberton.
Thank you. Lillooet. Last but not least. Oh, you're muted, Barb.
Well, I clicked the button. I guess it doesn't like me. I said, seeing as we're the regional moment tomorrow, I will let anybody who went over their 2 minutes have mine.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go into correspondence for action. 11.1, this is a letter from Kathy Peters regarding a global virtual summit. The request is that we consider attending. If anyone would like to attend, please contact staff and get registered. I have someone move receipt of this letter, moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. The next one, 11.2, is the Lower Mainland Local Government Association. CIVEX registration is now open. Again, contact staff if you're interested in attending. It is always an awesome event. It looks like it's still virtual over 3 days, so a bit of a commitment, but if you're interested, go. Can I have someone go ahead, Director Elliott?
This year's conference is really focused on building diversity, equity, and inclusion in communities. And the reason it's over 3 days is it's because it's from 12 noon to 2:30. So you don't have to dedicate your whole day, just your lunch hour and a little bit more. And there's some great speakers lined up. So if you do have the time, it's a great way to spend a little bit of your day. And I'll move receipts.
Thank you. Moved by Director Elliott, seconded by Director Birch-Jones. Any further comments?
Yeah, it's free.
I agree. It's an awesome event. Sorry, Director Rainbow, go ahead.
And we should have.
CEVEX is free. And I thought you could just go ahead and register online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the package. Director Crompton?
Just going to say, go see the sky, go. Let's be well represented.
Okay. Thank you. Director Demare?
Yeah, just on the next two.
Oh, okay. Sorry, did I call the question, Director Clark? I don't think so. I'm calling the question. Is there anyone opposed to receiving? Seeing none, motion carries. 11.3 and 11.4, Director Demare, would you like to make a comment?
Yes, I would. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest for both agenda items, as my daughter is a staff member, paid staff member with the BRVCA, and my wife is a director on the board.
Okay, can we put Director Demare in the waiting room, please? All right, he's gone. A request for resolution of support for the Bridge River Valley Community Association for the Braylorn Pioneer Mines Office NDIT fund application. Could I have someone make the motion that we write the letter of support? Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Elliott. Any comments? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. And the second 11.4 is the request for funding and resolution of support for the Brevka Braylorn Recreation Association Committee regarding the Trail and Bike Trails Project NDIT Recreational Infrastructure Grant application. So this is to make the funds available. Can I have someone make that motion? Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Wiebe. Any comments? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Let's bring Director Demare back.
I love reading the Bridge River Valley.
Okay, welcome back, Director Demare. There was no late business. Am I correct? Right. All right. Are there any notices of motion from anyone? Seeing none, we will now recess. Director Clark, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair. I think we just want a motion to go into closed, and then we'll come back out and do our motion to recess.
Oh, okay. See, we've never done this before. All out of whack. All right. Could I have someone make the motion that we go into closed? Moved by Director Birch-Jones, seconded by Director Wiebe. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And you now need a 5-minute or so recess so that you can make sure that the live streaming is done.